14th, 2020. It's 8:32 a.m. We are having our Public Safety Commission meeting for December 2020. Everyone's present, Commissioner Lamb, Commissioner Kung, Commissioner Donnelly, Commissioner Alsaroff, and Commissioner Ehrlich. Stephanie Cowell indicated that she would not be able to make it, but we'll go ahead and start our meeting. So everyone's here except for Stephanie. And our first item on the agenda is public comment. I know we have a lot of public comment. To the extent that it's the same email that's been forwarded by multiple people, if we could just indicate who sent that same email. But I know a lot of them are actually different.
Okay, so I will share my screen and play the public comment.
Sounds good. The commissioner should also have been emailed a copy of these.
Hey, Chiefs, why don't you guys ever get that dressed up for my meetings? Duly noted.
Sean, duly noted. Welcome.
Oh, Joe, is there any general public comment, or is this all for agenda item 7?
They're all for agenda item 7.
Okay, why don't we wait until we hit that agenda item? Sorry, I should have clarified that if there was any general public comment. But since, Sean, did you want to say something before we move ahead?
Alan's evidently got the same sleep problem that I do, and so he had invited me this morning to join you so that I could say no comment, no comment, no comment. So I'm happy to do that an hour later.
So we can let you get on with your day. Why don't we just have you give a quick spiel?
I think Alan wanted me to speak to the something about Chief Ortiz. I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say other than I'm very confident in Chief Zielinski's ability to lead the department.
Yes.
And I'm happy that he is. And
Or can you stop a minute?
For a second, yes.
Okay, I made a list for Jack, a check.
Oh, I think you need to mute.
Everything above the
Joe.
blue line has to be
yourself, please.
completed before he can move on to
Okay.
something else.
Okay.
Okay.
Joe,
Yes.
if you,
Can you mute?
if you could mute yourself for a moment, please.
Thank you. Sorry, Sean, go ahead.
I was mentioning that Brian and I have a great time working together, and I am happy that he is leading the South Pasadena Police Department. We speak regularly. I'm very pleased with the progress that he's making, and I have no comment with respect to Chief Ortiz's status. With respect to the police investigations of citizen complaints, I had mentioned when I had made the public announcement concerning the chief's departure and the subject investigations that I would have no status reports concerning those investigations between now and their conclusion. At their conclusion, by the way, though the report, the findings will be public, the findings will be, I should just let you know, will be one-page statements that conclude whether or not the respective complaints were sustained, not sustained, unfounded, or the subject exonerated. That's it. It's not going to be. It's not going to be more than that. The findings will not be more than that. They are all subject to the Peace Officer Bill of Rights. We will, of course, adhere to the Peace Officer Bill of Rights. And Alan, can you remind me what else you wanted me to speak to?
I think you pretty much covered it. I think I just mentioned or asked about what the scope of the investigation might be, if it was specific to complaints received or a little bit broader review, because we've had some citizen complaints about the police department over the last 6 months in general in regards to Black Lives Matter and the national discussion of the culture of policing.
No.
No, it's not related to that, or no, you can't
No,
discuss
the investigations are concern the 7 public citizen complaints, and that's the scope. The scope is those complaints in their entirety. Chief Selinsky and I again speak regularly about his aspirations for making the police department even greater than it already is, and he is working every day to do just that. And he has my full support as he undertakes the improvements, operational improvements that he is taking.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
Thanks for joining, Sean. We always appreciate it. If you don't have anything else, you're free to go about your day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. There is one general public comment. Rather than try to have the PowerPoint play, I'll just go ahead and read it since we have it via email. It's from Mary Urquhart, and she said, my first comment is regarding the paramedic services yearly contract. I am urging every South Pasadena resident or business owner to sign up to South Pasadena's paramedic subscription program. This is one of the best deals in the city and literally a lifesaver. My next comment is regarding the vacant Caltrans homes. Our police department is doing everything in their power to take care of this situation. However, I think that this is an impossible task. I respectfully ask that the PSC create a subcommittee on this matter and work with the Planning Department Commission to present some viable long-term options to the City Council. Whether these houses are eventually sold or fixed up and rented again, they must be fortified against unwanted invasion. Some wooden boards and no trespassing signs do not secure these houses. We want our neighborhood taken back from the damaging legacy of the State Route 710 freeway project. So that was the only general comment that we had. And the next item on the agenda is the minutes from October 19th, 2020. If everyone's had an opportunity to look at them, if someone would like to make a motion.
I move to approve the minutes as is.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Ehrlich, a second from Commissioner Donnelly. Everyone in favor, please say yes and raise your hand. So any abstentions or vote no votes? Okay, so everyone present has voted to approve the minutes from the Public Safety Commission on October 19th, 2020. The second item on the agenda is just to talk about the chair and vice chair nominations for 2021. It may have come off unclear in the agenda, but Brian and I put this on here just to kind of just let everyone know that for 2021, we're going to be doing elections for chair and vice chair. And just think about, what role you want to play or what role you think others might be good at for the commission for 2021. I will not be accepting nominations for chair or vice chair, just FYI. And we'll probably do elections in February due to some changes that we have going on. So something to think about. And but as that day comes closer, usually what happens is Brian or Paul will send out a little blurb on kind of how the process works. It's like any other motion. We nominate, someone nominates, somebody seconds, and then we vote on whether or not that person should be chair or vice chair. So any questions on that process? Okay. So the next item on the agenda item number 3, is talking about the PSC charge or ordinance, which has gone through some discussions. In October, we voted to kind of put the PSC checkmark on it. Since then, I had a meeting with the city manager and we discussed some very minor changes. And I guess Paul's got a staff report on that. So I'll turn it over to you.
Really, no staff report. This is just an update to update you as far as the forecasting for getting that to the city council. As you stated, since it was approved to form in October with a 4-1 vote, we forecasted it immediately and it will go to council on January 20th. So January 20th meeting will be brought before council along with, as a receive and file, the recommendations that were made for the police reform recommendations. That will be presented on the same night as a receive and file to the council. So really, if there's no questions, it was just an update as to when that was going to go to council and be formalized.
Yeah, and keep an eye out on the council agenda. There were some very minor changes that were made, and I don't know that we got a copy of it, but if we can get it, or just look at it in the council agenda, and you can make comment at that point before it goes to council.
Yeah, I can certainly send it out if you would like, Chair, prior to the council. Again, I was just going off the email chain as you said.
Yeah, and I think the main discussion that I had with the city manager is if we're going to make something optional, why does it need to be memorialized in the ordinance? And I think that's kind of where most of the discussion happened. So in effect, there should be very little change rather than just saying something that's optional doesn't need to be written in the ordinance, kind of along those lines. Any questions for charter to Chief Riddle? All right, moving along. So item number 4 is the draft annual report, which Brian sent a copy of to us.
Thank you, everyone. So you should all have a copy of the draft report. In that, the draft report lists a couple of different accomplishments of the Public Safety Commission, the Fire Department, and the Police Department that we've all collaborated on together over the year. Part of that, as Commissioner Ding had already mentioned, it was the police reform, the 8 Can't Wait, and the subcommittee and the work that they did with council on that. And the Fire Department also added the COVID-19 response. In addition to that, we also listed the Public Safety Commission, the charter change. So those were the items. We're limited to 3. This will be read at the commission.
Commissioners Congress.
Thank you. The Commissioners Congress That'll be read at the Commissioners Congress sometime at the early beginning of the year. I haven't picked a date, but usually it's around February, end of January, first part of February. So we're limited on what we can discuss. Each commission will get up there and present their annual report. So these are the 3 items that we put on the report for your review, and staff is seeking the commission's approval to move forward with this. Does anybody have any questions that I can answer?
My only comment would be, I think it would be good if we could, and up to them, so I want to put this out there for discussion, is if we can kind of recognize the people that were on those subcommittees. So for charter, it was Amin and Graves. For COVID, it was Scott and Alan. And for police reform, it was Ed and Scott. So kind of maybe just emphasize the fact that there was a subcommittee and those were the members that helped drive that initiative.
Absolutely, happy to do it.
Jeremy?
Go ahead, Alan.
For consideration under the COVID section, I might suggest adding activation of the EOC and EOP. And if Paul and Brian were willing to go so far, maybe an additional comment, roughly a preliminary review of the city's overall response indicates emergency communication processes with residents and businesses could be improved.
If I can just add, so just going back to what Brian said, so when we present this, it is a format that is sent out, and each commission kind of follows a format, and the goal is to keep the presentation brief at the Commissioner Congress. So although I see nothing wrong with it, my goal would be to keep this more concise document, but again, open to discussion to the commission.
The way it's actually done is each commissioner, I want to say each chair of each commissioner or whoever speaks gets like 3 minutes. And the PowerPoint actually only has 3 bullet points and none of the text below. So it's up to whoever's speaking to dive into those 3 bullet points. I think the annual report is made public somewhere, but it's not like published per se at the Commissioner Congress. It's kind of just, you just talk about it.
So I just want to raise one thing. Just to clarify, I was on, at least at the outset, the COVID subcommittee with Alan. What I would say to Alan's comment, though, is I think it might be premature to add something like that right now, since we haven't done a formal review yet of the response and everything else. And I think, or one hasn't been done as far as I know. And so I think at this point, I would suggest not including something as conclusive as that. Even saying it, preliminary review or something like that, I think is premature and might not be appropriate at this point.
Thanks. Are you looking for an approval this month or just something to think about for next month or sometime before the Congress?
You're asking me?
I'm asking Brian or Paul.
So what we're asking for is for consideration for approval. We'd like to get this approved and put it on the agenda and finalize it. So yes, and since we're asking for the commission's approval to move forward with this
Today.
Yes.
Okay. So I think the way that it worked last time is the commission approved everything except for the chair comments. And I think the new chair would write those comments. So I'll motion to approve the 2020 Public Safety Commission annual report as presented by staff with the recommended changes about recognizing subcommittee members. Yeah, any second?
I second.
All right, so I made a motion and Grace seconded that motion. And everyone in favor, please say yes and raise your hand.
Aye.
Yes, I.
That's all members present. Any abstentions or no votes? Okay, so the new chair will write the comments, and the annual report looks good. So the next thing on the agenda is item number 5, which is the 2020 work plan, which Brian had sent to us. I had also sent the one from 2020 out, and I think my main suggestion was, I think that in 2020 we had kind of set that we were going to be down certain months. Let me check. Where is my? I think we had decided that we were not going to meet in July and November, and I think that in the work plan that was sent out, the months were a little bit different. Not a big deal, but for consistency, I think July and November were generally the ones that had conflicts with holidays or people going on vacation. So I would like to keep July and November as our down months, and then there's the topics that we can talk about. It's just a suggestion. We can always change the agenda or add to the agenda as necessary, but it's roughly something to kind of map out our year. So I think I like the final. I think that a lot of the things from the 2020 look good and can be reused, or not reused, but receive updates on. So just, I mean, I guess, what does everyone think?
And Mr. Chair, if I could, there was, if I'm not mistaken, there was one public comment included in your packet. There was not it was by William Kelly. There was no request to read it out loud. But
Was that the Care First thing?
Yeah, Care First, yes. And
Okay.
was packet, but no request to read it out loud.
Yeah, and I think we all received that, and I think it was. I was somewhat confused by it because it was a draft ordinance that I think that organization had drafted, and not the city, but it didn't really have context surrounding it. Is it right, Brian? I think you were the one that forwarded it to me.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It was an ordinance that they prepared. To my knowledge, it was an ordinance that Care First prepared, not in partnership with the city.
Yeah, and generally, and I'll just summarize it. It's something that we discussed at prior meetings, is that they want the city to explore kind of the mobile crisis intervention model of not having police respond to kind of more social calls with regard to mentally ill or homeless issues. So, and that's, conversations that our council liaison is already having with the Council of Governments. So those conversations are already happening. Any comments on the 2021 work plan?
Yeah, Jeremy, I'm looking at the email from Bill Kelly, and the first line there just says that Care First supports the work plan. And as you've already indicated, they had asked that we consider including the cahoots as one of the elements. You've just addressed that. This is a question I have for Brian. The January task is a feasibility to study the unarmed traffic enforcement. Given that we're in the middle of December, is the next 30 days, considering Christmas holiday, New Year's holiday, enough time for the police department to put that together?
This would not start till January, so this is obviously we wouldn't do it this month, but not till next month. That's just the start. It's certainly a discussion point. We can move it down if it would be better served at another month. What we're trying to do is get it on there as soon as possible. given that it would probably take some time to prepare. So although it's in January, that doesn't necessarily mean that we would complete it. That would be our beginning phase.
Okay, 'cause I was concerned that the desired outcome there was to present the feasibility study to the council. And since it was listed in January, it just wasn't clear.
Yeah. So it's our intent to start the process at that point, but by no means does that mean that we'd have to complete it within that 30 days, but we do want to get it on the agenda and moving forward.
Is that in response to the Care First public comment or council, or like what generated the need to try to initiate that discussion? And not the need, but what generated that?
So this was a discussion that was held, and council brought it back and requested at the last meeting that it go to the Public Safety Commission for review.
So council wants to take a look at unarmed traffic enforcement.
That is correct. It was Care First had brought it up to council. I believe it was in a public comment, and then direction was taken by council with a second to move forward and present this to public safety for review.
Okay, yeah, so just to clarify, it wasn't something that was generated by the Public Safety Commission, but that council wants us to take a look at any type of staff report or analysis that has been done with regard to this topic.
Correct.
Cool, thank you. This is not something that I think we need to finalize today. So if you have any ideas or want to make any adjustments, let me or Ryan or Paul know. I kind of like the one that we put forward last year, but we can always move things around or add things. And I guess my main thing is just being down in July and November and having our October meeting 1 week later due to the federal holiday. If there's no other comments on the work plan, we can go to agenda item number 6, which is COVID-19 recovery response.
Mr. Chair, I would just note that it may take staff some additional time to present something to the commission on unarmed enforcement. And what you have identified for February doesn't look like it would take as much time to prepare. So just a suggestion that as staff is running into time and preparing the unarmed enforcement, that you may want to consider flipping what's identified in February in January, move that to January and flip unarmed enforcement to February.
It wasn't generated by me or the Public Safety Commission, so whenever you guys want to present it, I'm happy with.
I would concur with the mayor on that because if PD needs time to present the feasibility study to the commission first, so that we can then forward it on to the council, I think February is a more realistic timetable for that. And as Brian said, PD is going to begin that process now, if not in January. So that gives you more time to prepare that study for our review.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. Happy to do it.
Yeah, I can work with Brian to create a running edit list of the work plan. So if you guys have any ideas or suggestions, just email. Okay, yeah, the COVID-19 recovery response program, item 6. Also, I forgot to mention this earlier, but Deputy Chief Selinsky, we would like to thank you for stepping up as acting chief and, leading the department while we have a vacant chief position. So sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier, but we appreciate you wearing both hats.
Jeremy,
for COVID-19 response recovery. Is that you, Paul, or
Yeah,
that's up?
back on.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just me.
Okay, no worries.
I don't know if it's on my end, but I'm only hearing bits and pieces and everybody's cutting out.
Okay, why don't we move to 7 while we sort out the technical difficulties? So agenda item number 7 is the vacant Caltrans homes, and Alan had requested we discuss this at the Public Safety Commission meeting. And I believe you have a presentation, and we also have a lot of public comment. So go ahead with your presentation, and then we can do public comment.
Okay. I'd like to say the quick background. It's a little bit lengthy. As we know, in the 1960s and 70s, Caltrans had purchased about 460 homes in El Sereno, South Pasadena, and Pasadena in anticipation of building the 710 extension. 2017, Metro withdrew their support for the program, and 2018, Caltrans terminated the project. Since then, Caltrans has been slow to repair, rent, or sell the houses. As of last August, 163 single and multifamily homes in the former 710 corridor are vacant. Within South Pasadena, some of the streets that have these vacant homes are Berkshire, Valley View, Bonita, Gillette Crescent, Meridian, Gravalia. The concern of the residents, which is what we'll be hearing shortly, began March 14th in 2020. A group called Reclaiming Our Homes that was fighting homelessness and Caltrans' continued ownership of the vacant properties occupied 13 homes in El Sereno, mostly along Sheffield Avenue. In October of 2020, Caltrans signed an agreement with the City of LA's Housing Authority to make 22 of the El Sereno properties, including the 13 that were already occupied, available for transitional housing. In early April of 2020, 2 of the 7 vacant Caltrans homes located on Bonita Avenue were similarly occupied by squatters. There are only 27 residences on that entire block, so 25% of the block are vacant houses. Among the residents concerned at the time were possible increase in crime, safety, and that as none of the Caltrans homes have running electricity or gas, that the possibility of a fire starting in one of those homes could quickly spread to the neighboring properties, which are very tightly packed and in a hilly section of the city. In April, at the time, the residents reached out to Mayor Bob Joe, Assemblyman Holden, Senator Portantino, the city manager, and SPPD. The Highway Patrol was responsibility for safeguarding state properties, was called in, and they evicted those squatters within a few days. On November 25, just last month, repeated that they saw strangers scoping out the properties. I want to commend Watch Commander Bartle for responding to their email complaints within hours, and SPPD stepping up patrols in the area and alerting Chip just across the border in El Sereno. The occupied another 20 homes. That was in a 3-day standoff with the occupants and protesters, which began the Wednesday night right before Thanksgiving. between Thursday and Friday, 62 people were arrested for trespassing in an unlawful assembly. Video of the arrests showed that Chip had responded in riot gear. And video showed that some of those were arrested were hogtied when they were carried out of the homes. The issue that the residents are bringing to the Safety Commission today Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Alan? If not, can we play the public comment? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ed.
Actually, the question is for Chief Zielinski. Given Commissioner Ehrlich's presentation, could you briefly describe how jurisdiction works between SPPD, CHP, and Caltrans for those properties?
I'm sorry, my internet connection just cut out again, so I only caught part of that.
I was wondering if you could just give us a quick description of how the responsibilities break down between SPPD, Highway Patrol, and Caltrans when addressing squatters or other issues with those properties?
Absolutely. So the Caltrans homes are obviously state property. They're owned by Caltrans, and ultimately they are responsible for them. However, because it's state property, the Highway Patrol has been asked to patrol or handle any law enforcement activity there. I meet fairly regularly with both the East Los Angeles and Altadena CHP stations. Those are the offices that provide the protection and enforcement side of it to our properties here in South Pass, the Caltrans properties. So I've been working with them pretty regularly, as well as one of the commanders from the Hollenbeck station of LAPD, since those are our immediate partners. Having said that, what we've committed to is trying to work together and keep each other informed of any action that's going to take place. So residents might notice that the Highway Patrol has been present in the south end of our city. They're doing extra patrols. They're trying to be diligent in their efforts to keep squatters from coming in or the reclaimers. What we've asked of them is to let us know when they're in town, to work with us and make sure that we keep those lines of communication open. Our commitment is that if a resident sees something or calls something, that we will respond immediately. We'll go to the location, we'll try to secure the scene, stabilize it, and then we'll call the Highway Patrol to come in. And depending on what the nature of the investigation is, South Pasadena can either take over the investigation or hand it off to the Highway Patrol. It just depends on the nature of the investigation, but that's a quick summary of the process. Does anybody have any questions?
I'm good. Yeah, we can go to public comment.
Okay, now I will share my screen and play the public comments.
It looks like it's playing, but we can't hear anything.
Joe, you might check that little sound bar at the right-hand side. Make sure it's up. Yep.
Can you hear it on your computer, Joe?
I can hear it. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but not the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Under your share screen option, try to share the PowerPoint application and not just screen 1 or screen 2.
Okay.
It's one of the Zoom options.
Susan Solsky, agenda item number 7. Dear PSC Chair and Committee.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, it's working now. Thank you.
Okay.
Susan Solsky, agenda item number 7. Dear PSC Chair and Commissioners. The vacant Caltrans homes remains a great concern to those of us who live near these vacant and abandoned properties, particularly on Bonita Drive and Meridian Avenue. Our safety has been and continues to be compromised. I have reached out over the years to both the City Council and to our state representatives, and there has been little to no action other than the city negotiating to sell vacant Caltrans lots on Valley View to developers. We want to hear what actionable steps will be taken to stop squatters from residing in our neighborhood. In April 2020, squatters broke into 901 Bonita Drive and an adjacent property. And just recently, on November 25th, one neighbor on Bonita Drive called the police about a suspicious individual just days before squatters illegally entered vacant Caltrans homes in El Sereno. These vacant Caltrans homes do not have power. If people are willing to illegally take over a property, it is very likely that they can tap into gas lines and start a fire. This is a major public safety issue and puts our neighborhood and our children in danger. It is time that the city work actively with our state officials to secure these properties beyond a no trespassing sign. It is time to be proactive, rather than waiting for our own El Sereno incident. Thank you. Susan Solsky. Joanne Nuckel's agenda item 7. Dear Commissioners. 25 and 15 years ago, the LA Times and the Pasadena Weekly did exposes on the deplorable conditions of the state-owned properties in the 710 corridor. Stories in subsequent emails. Additionally, the Orange CO Register did the same on all state-owned property, featuring those in the SR 710 corridor being one of the more egregious examples. Some of the same conditions remain today, only worse, with more vacant houses caused by a concerted effort by Caltrans to depopulate the route. Those previous stories were at a time when there was still a proposed road or tunnel. That threat and the necessity to hang onto the properties does not exist today. All the properties could be legally sold tomorrow under the current regulations, but Caltrans is stalling for some reason. Eliminating the vacant house problems, restoring the neighborhoods and getting these 100+ properties back on the city's tax rolls should be one of the city's top priorities. The city needs to take an aggressive approach to moving the stalled sales along. I suggest that the PSC recommend to City Council immediate reconstituting of the Caltrans House Subcommittee with 2 council people, add representatives from the PSC and PC. Existing tenants and neighborhood reps to assist the city staff and housing consultant in determining the quickest, most efficient way to sell the houses quickly and solve the existing problems with the vacant houses in the interim. Action. Joy solved a similar problem 20 years ago on Berkshire Ave. It can be done again. Joanne Nuckel's. Mary Urquhart, agenda item number 7. Dear PSC Chair and Commissioners, my first comment is regarding the paramedic services yearly contract. I am urging every South Pasadena resident or business owner to sign up to South Pasadena's paramedic subscription program. This is one of the best deals in the city and literally a lifesaver. My next comment is regarding the vacant Caltrans homes. Our police department is doing everything in their power to take care of this situation. However, I think that this is an impossible task. I respectfully ask that the PSC create a subcommittee on this matter and work with the Planning Department Commission to present some viable, long-term options to the City Council. Whether these houses are eventually sold or fixed up and rented again, they must be fortified against unwanted invasion. Some wooden boards and no trespassing signs do not secure these houses. We want our neighborhood taken back from the damaging legacy of the State Route 710 freeway project. Thank you for your time. Mary Urquhart. Sean Tier, agenda item 7. Dear PSC Chair and Commissioners, as you may know, the Reclaim Our Homes organization. Sean Tier, agenda item 7. Dear PSC Chair and Commissioners, as you may know, the Reclaim Our Homes organization has been promoting that people actively occupy the vacant Caltrans structures in our South Pasadena neighborhood as they have in El Sereno and other cities. We have a handful of Caltrans rundown structures on and near Bonita Drive, where my family and I live. Having people move into unoccupied and uninhabitable vacant properties is a safety concern for the entire neighborhood. None of these properties has been structurally maintained by Caltrans, and as the season grows colder, occupants will undoubtedly heat and cook inside these dilapidated structures. The risk of fire danger is immense, and not just to the Caltrans property itself, but to the adjacent homes and to the neighborhood. Although I appreciate a more visible police presence lately, there is no way that law enforcement can monitor these rundown structures every minute, and no trespassing signs haven't turned people away. A permanent solution needs to be found. My neighbors and I have seen suspicious activity on our street by people we do not recognize viewing these properties. The city of South Pasadena needs to do something immediately to fix this situation. Sally Takita, agenda item number 7. Dear PSC Chair and Commissioners, I write to all of you to ensure you are aware how concerned and anxious we are for our neighborhood, and we want to hear what actionable steps will be taken to stop squatters from illegally residing in our neighborhood. As you know, there are 7 vacant Caltrans homes, out of 27 homes, on Bonita Drive. In April 2020, squatters broke into 901 Bonita Drive and an adjacent property. And just recently, on November 25th, one neighbor on Bonita Drive noticed a man who was peering into one of the Caltrans properties on Bonita and feeling out. The neighbors, just days before squatters illegally entered vacant Caltrans homes in El Sereno, where police were called in to remove them and a coordinated protest ensued. The vacant Caltrans homes are uninhabitable, they do not have gas nor electric in the property. There is a tremendous amount of deferred maintenance on these properties. Having someone come in to squat puts our neighborhood in danger. If they are willing to illegally reside in a property, very likely, they would illegally turn on the gas and electric line. This is a major public safety issue. And one wouldn't need to stretch their imagination that other illegal activities would then follow. Having vacant properties has been an eyesore, but with persons actively squatting Caltrans properties in El Sereno and Alhambra, we are nervous this will happen in South Pasadena, on Bonita Drive. Please help us. Thank you, Sally Takita, Sean Tier, Noah Takita Tier, SPHS Senior, Evan Takita Tier, SPHS Freshman. Agenda number 7. Kim Carlson. Dear PSC Chair and Commissioners, as a resident of Bonita Drive, where there are multiple vacant Caltrans homes, I am very concerned about the current situation. With 7 vacant Caltrans homes, out of 27 homes, on Bonita Drive, we need you to understand our concerns for our neighborhood. Let me be clear, we do not want squatters breaking into these vacant homes and illegally occupying them. Earlier this year, squatters broke into 901 Bonita Drive and an adjacent property. Again, during late November, our neighbor noticed a man who was peering into one of the Caltrans properties on Bonita. All of this occurred days before squatters illegally entered vacant Caltrans homes in El Sereno, where police were called in to remove them and a coordinated protest ensued. This group in El Sereno has stated in newspaper reports and podcasts that their goal is to take over these homes and reclaim them for use. It is unlawful to take over a home that you do not own and decide to live there without a legal agreement. Not to mention, the reason these homes are not being rented out or sold is that they are entirely uninhabitable. This puts us in danger because despite the decrepit condition, these squatters may illegally turn on electric or gas, increasing the fire risk and thus threatening the homes and hills in our neighborhood. Having vacant properties has been an eyesore that should have been dealt with by our city engaging with Caltrans many years ago. Now, we are at risk of squatters and fire. We need a plan for this situation. We need to determine how to immediately address the situation, and what our city is going to do when squatters come to the area. Please help us on this issue. Thank you. Kim and Brock Carlson. Linda Esposito, agenda item number 7. Dear PSC Chair and Commissioners, as a longtime South Pasadena resident, I am concerned about crime. On April 6, 2020, a purported homeless rights organization activist group broke into 2 Caltrans-owned properties. One home, a duplex, was occupied at the time of the break-in. According to neighbors, 2 men gained entry with a key and a crowbar, respectively. When confronted, they attempted to intimidate, bribe and threaten the neighbors, before leaving both properties open and driving off. Neighbors mobilized and patrolled the area for weeks. We did not feel the support from local law enforcement or any South Pasadena elected official or city representative. We are tired of multiple government agencies disowning jurisdiction. As a taxpayer, I am baffled by the lack of response and question where my money is allocated. Thankfully, and perhaps because residents' support appears to have waned dramatically for reclaiming homes, law enforcement seems to have stepped up efforts to patrol the vacant homes along the South Pasadena section of the 710 corridor. On November 25, 2020, a known male activist with the Row organization attempted to intimidate me as I was leaving my home. I reported this activity to SPPD. He returned 45 minutes later and tried to engage my neighbors about homeless rights. He brazenly asked if they rented or owned their home. I have no compunction about confronting troublemakers, however, I want reassurance that productive measures are taken to patrol or sell the vacant Caltrans properties. Thank you, Linda Esposito. Delane Shane, agenda item number 7. Dear PSC Chair and Commissioners, the vacant Caltrans homes are of great concern to our neighbors. We greatly appreciate the increased patrol by our police department, the California Highway Patrol, and at the borders, the Los Angeles Police Department during the holidays. Police Chief Zielinski and Lieutenant Rob Lido have reached out to me to explain what our police department is doing. I greatly appreciate their support and I have passed on the information. However, the police and other law enforcement agencies cannot guard these dilapidated structures all the time. With simply too many on one particular street, our neighbors have become anxious and suspicious of anyone they do not recognize walking along their street. Asking the residents to call if something is amiss is putting too much on them with so many houses, especially within the context of El Sereno and the reclaimers. Slumlord Caltrans is getting off too easily. Is Caltrans reimbursing our police department for the extra patrols to watch these houses? I respectfully ask that the PSC create a subcommittee on this matter and work with the Planning Department Commission to present some viable, long-term options to the City Council. Whether these houses are eventually sold or fixed up and rented again, they must be fortified against unwanted invasion. Some wooden boards and no trespassing signs do not secure these houses. We want our neighborhood taken back from the damaging legacy of the State Route 710 freeway project. Thank you. Delane Shane. Emily Beacon, Agenda 7. Dear PSC Chair and Commissioners, the vacant Caltrans homes on Bonita Drive and nearby are an immense concern to my family, my neighbors, and me. Caltrans has created several of these public attractive nuisances on our block, and they must fix the situation immediately. Caltrans is and has been in direct violation of the South Pasadena City Code, Section 24.02, Subdivision C 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, probably 10 through 16, etc., for literal decades. While we greatly appreciate the increased patrol by our police department, the California Highway Patrol, and at the border, the Los Angeles Police Department during the holidays, law enforcement cannot guard these crumbling and dilapidated structures at all times. My neighbors and I have become suspicious of anyone we do not recognize walking along the street, in direct opposition to the reason that I moved to open, welcoming South Pasadena. It is important to note that Caltrans is violating its duties to maintain its properties and has created a dangerous condition on these public properties in violation of California Government Code Section 835. Additionally, Caltrans is in violation of Government Code Section 815.6, failure to discharge mandatory duty. The city cannot turn a blind eye any longer. Furthermore, regarding the Reclaim Our Homes organization, while I personally sympathize with all unhoused persons, I am concerned for the safety of any person or child who attempts to inhabit these public attractive nuisances. I am also concerned that in the age of social media, this neighborhood will become the target of unwanted attention, especially when Caltrans is the entity that has failed us all. I respectfully join my neighbors in asking that a subcommittee be created for this matter to work with the Planning Department Commission to present some viable, long-term options to the City Council. Additionally, the city must put pressure on Caltrans to fix this problem they have created. Wooden boards and no trespassing signs do not secure these houses. Please help us reclaim our neighborhood from the failed State Route 710 freeway project. Thank you for your attention in this matter.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you very much. Alan, did you have more?
Yeah. This first question, I guess, would go to Brian. Is it possible we could get Caltrans to put security cameras on these properties so that Highway Patrol and possibly SPPD would have a faster alert that something amiss might be up?
I can certainly bring it up to them at our next meeting. I'd be happy to do that. I just want to let anybody that's watching know, certainly if there's any concerns about the safety, if there are individuals that are walking around the properties that shouldn't be there, to please call the police department. We have an incredibly fast response time. And as I mentioned before, we're working hand in hand with both Los Angeles Police Department and the Highway Patrol. So if there are concerns, please call us and let us know.
Brian, would you want them calling 911 or the direct line?
I'll leave that up to them. If it's an emergency, a life-threatening emergency, then I would definitely recommend calling 911 if it is a suspicious person that's walking around. Doesn't look like they're trying to break in, then the business line would suffice.
And that number is?
626-403-7270.
And just to add a little bit to that is that if they're calling from their cell phone and they dial 911, it actually may take longer than just calling the business line. If it gets routed to CHP and then they route it back to South Pasadena. So, and our dispatch is great. I rarely ever get put on hold. So I probably, unless it is a true emergency, you know, the business line is very, very good.
So 911, we recommend if it's life-threatening, by all means, call us on 911. Otherwise, the business line would suffice.
Okay.
Okay. The two proposals I'd like to put out there, from all of the public comments, there was a repeated request that we form a ad hoc joint committee, subcommittee with the Planning Commission and other related interested parties. Is there a interest or a second to create such a group?
Mr. Chair, if I could add just something for historical knowledge. Earlier this year, actually Mayor Mahmood actually proposed a vacant property task force that was put together, which currently includes all of the departments in the city. That includes fire, PD, public works, planning. Fire is taking the lead on it because staffing in the planning department was in transition. And of course, the events of 2020 have kind of delayed that process, but that has definitely, that group, that task force has reconvened. We have started the discussions of moving forward again, and our goal is to bring recommended revisions to the city council sometime, we're hoping in March. And again, the planning department now has a full-time code enforcement officer with experience from the jurisdiction he came from in dealing with vacant properties in the community. So just for historical knowledge, there is a vacant property task force in place, which all departments are represented in that discussion.
Okay, and that's being led by the planning department. My internet kind of cut out. Is that what you said?
Oh, so it was kind of initially by fire. Okay. But with the expertise being in the code enforcement side of it, but all departments definitely play a role in their respective enforcement areas.
Okay.
I would also note that there is an ad hoc committee on Caltrans homes. It's an ad hoc committee of city council. I understand that I was not one of the ad hoc committee members, and the former members are both no longer on city council, but definitely as I consider city council liaison appointments, I was going to reconstitute that committee because obviously Caltrans housing is an important issue, and it has been an important issue for many years. I have attended meetings of the 710, which have also been attended. This was no 710 before we finally secured the termination of the threatened freeway through our town. And at that time, Portantino staff member Christy Lopez regularly attended those meetings to discuss Caltrans housing issues. With, at that point, it was primarily the tenants, but it also addressed, her discussion also addressed vacant properties. Unfortunately, the city has very little leverage. It is very, very difficult as a small town of 26,000 to put any kind of pressure. And we have tried repeatedly working with both Assemblymember Holden as well as Senator Portantino. We just tried, this was back last year, we worked, this is so complicated, we worked with what are called HREs under Caltrans regulations. These are housing related entities. To acquire properties, it would basically be a pass-through escrow where, pursuant to state regulations, if the city acquires the properties, then the city has precedence over acquisition of the properties before they are sold to third parties. We partnered with these HREs to acquire, I forget the exact number, but it would have been, as I recall, maybe about, it was in the teens, it was maybe 17 or so properties consisting of one rather large apartment complex located at 626 Prospect. There were one or two small multi-unit, I think they were duplexes, and then the rest were single family homes. And the financial model upon which these affordable housing developers proposed, and pursuant to the contract that the city signed with these two separate HREs, they would have acquired some of these homes. In one instance, they would have sold, this is at 626 Prospect, that is currently apartments. They would have been converted into condominiums. Some of the condominium units would have been sold at market rate. The proceeds would then have been used to rehabilitate the remaining properties, and the remaining properties would have been sold as affordable housing. With respect to the other developer, that involved primarily the acquisition of single-family residences, it was a similar financial model. Unfortunately, Caltrans rejected the city's proposed contract. We just received, even though we had originally submitted the proposal to Caltrans last September, we just learned last month that Caltrans rejected both properties. It took Caltrans that long to consider and reject the city's proposal. And the premise is that Caltrans did not believe that the existing state regulations permitted the properties to be sold. So the city is in a conundrum in that the city has the opportunity to acquire these properties, working with an affordable housing developer to create more affordable housing within the city. And yet at this point, Caltrans is of the view that, at least based upon the financial model that the deals were presented, that it doesn't have the ability to approve the city's proposal. So I just met with Christy Lopez last Thursday. She is meeting with with Senator Portantino today to discuss my specific concerns regarding this issue. Like I said, I am going to repopulate again the City Council's ad hoc committee, and we are going to do all that we can to create some kind of urgency. Among other things, one of the things that occurs to me is that we might put pressure on Caltrans to try to rehabilitate at least some of the properties so that they can be populated, given that if Caltrans does believe that it needs to modify its existing regulations, and I mean, I don't know if you've ever dealt with a State Department's development of regulations. It takes about a year for that to occur, because they first have to develop the regulations. The regulations then have to go out for public comment, which typically is 30 to 60 days. The state agency then reviews the public comments and then makes any revisions that they believe is appropriate, that's responsive to the comments. After the state agency is comfortable with those comments, the regulations then have to go to the State Office of Administrative Law, which reviews those comments before they can become effective. So when all of this is done, it's about a year. So to me, what might be most feasible if Caltrans can obtain funding, is rehabilitation. And I will be discussing this proposal with our city manager later on today.
Okay. Any questions? Yeah, Alan.
Madam Mayor, if you know, has the city ever looked at using eminent domain to claim any of these properties?
I don't believe, well, first of all, we have no money. So in order to condemn, you've got to have the financial wherewithal to compensate. But at this point, I haven't specifically looked at the issue, whether or not a local government can condemn state property, but I suspect that we're a political subdivision of the state. I doubt that a political subdivision of the state has the ability to condemn state property, but as a practical matter, we have no money.
Okay. Second question, I've seen some suggestions that for the vacant properties, the city might be able to partner with an organization like Habitat for Humanity to build affordable housing there. I don't know if that's come up in any of the ad hoc previously.
You said with respect to the vacant properties, obviously.
The ones with no structures on them.
Vacant land, you mean?
Vacant land.
Again, we are certainly open to partner with anyone, and we did have 2 entities come to us. As you can imagine, it is likely less costly to rehabilitate existing properties as opposed to building new properties. But again, the problem is those entities need to come to us with money. We can get statutory priority with respect to, we're further up, if you will, on the pecking order with respect to having access to acquire the properties, but we have no money. So the affordable housing developers need to come with money to us. And unfortunately, right now, neither the state nor the federal government has made funds available for the development of affordable housing. Money used to be available on a local basis that was developed pursuant to tax increment financing, but that disappeared once the state terminated the existence of redevelopment agencies. At this point, the only method that is really available, that is viable for creation of affordable housing, is a paradigm whereby local governments are required to make available to developers increased densities. That is, developers, by committing to make a certain percentage of units in a proposed project affordable, they can build more units than they would otherwise be able to build pursuant to local law. And that was invoked by the developer of senior housing behind 625 Fair Oaks. Beyond that, the 2 recent developments that have been approved by the Planning Commission, 7 Patios and Mission Bell, neither developer exercised the opportunity to utilize that avenue. I will note that City Council, I specifically asked years ago for the Planning Department to develop an inclusionary housing ordinance, and that is presently before the Planning Commission. And I strongly anticipate that that will be part and parcel of our general plan when it is approved. And if possible, I would like to see an affordable housing ordinance developed and presented to City Council for enactment before then. But unfortunately, that doesn't do anything to help with the present Caltrans housing.
Thank you. I think we're kind of veering off into the housing element of this issue. And I guess with regard to the Public Safety Commission's role in the Caltrans issue, I think it's really just has to do with the police and fire aspect of it. Police resources being deployed and potential fire dangers from indoor cooking or illegal gas hookups, propane use, things like that. So I think that if the mayor is going to reconstitute the kind of Caltrans Homes ad hoc committee, it's my 2 cents that we can kind of wait and see what role PSC can play with regard to a subcommittee or having a liaison or something in that capacity. But I do think that the way this issue is going to get solved is not through police and fire, it's through legislative activity and contacting our elected representatives and setting fires under people's butts. And I don't know that we're from a PSC perspective and a fire and police perspective, we're just kind of responding to individual incidents, and I don't know how much we can affect the legislative machine other than maybe signing some letters or kind of appending with some statistics or something like that our lobbying efforts to our legislators. Alan. Yeah.
I'd like to ask Chief Riddle to investigate Chairman Ding for arson, because I don't think our committee should be talking about setting fires.
As it was a phrase, yeah. But that's just my thoughts. Well, what about everyone else?
One last thing. I was also originally going to make a motion that Public Safety Commission send a letter to the City Council summarizing all of these public comments today and asking them to make that a priority for the upcoming year. But since the mayor is already part of the meeting today and has spoken to it, and Chief Riddle has also spoken to what's going on with the city, I would just like to ask both of them to bring this up at the next City Council meeting to let the community know what's in the works already.
Cool. And I think one thing that may be useful in our lobbying efforts, if that's even the right term of trying to get our elected representatives to take action on this, is it's probably already being done, but to the extent that police and fire are responding to calls for service or deploying resources towards this issue, that maybe we just monitor and track that. So at some point we can say, fire and police have responded to 100 calls for service, so many hours and or whatever, just to kind of say, look, this is an urgent matter that needs to be addressed and requires your attention. So if there's nothing else on this, we can kind of go back to the COVID-19 agenda item. Any other commissioners have comments? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Alan, for that presentation. Chief Riddle, if we can talk about COVID real quick.
Yeah, and I'd like to start just by giving you a brief update as far as where we're at now. I know it seems kind of to talk about recovery at this point, we are smack dab in the second phase of this. The last time I spoke in October, just to give you an idea of how quickly things have ramped up, the positivity rate was hovering right about 3%, and right now it's hovering right about 12%. Obviously, that doesn't sound like a huge number, but if you really start doing the math, it's an amazing increase. It doesn't bode well for us in terms of how many people that get tested are actually positive, as well as the next concerning thing is the hospitalization rates as well. Last time I spoke in October, there was 722 patients in the hospital in LA County. Now there's over 4,000, and hospitals are very quickly having to come up with contingency plans or not come up with them. These are plans that were in place early in the year. And, they're having to implement those plans now to be able to treat this many patients. From our response matrix, this initially surprised a lot of people, but this is the norm in the region, is that fire departments not necessarily, we're not being impacted with a high response load, ironically. We're to the point in the pandemic where there's a lot of education. And so patients that are experiencing symptoms are communicating with their own private physicians a lot of times, and they're transporting themselves to the hospital and not necessarily using the 911 system, which is good. Education has gotten out there. So our call load is actually at normal status. We're running about one COVID call a shift. Our big challenges, quite frankly, are number one, the wall times at the hospital. So when we transport a patient, it's not uncommon for our paramedics to have to be with that patient for upwards of 40 minutes at a time until hospital staff can relieve our personnel and take care of that patient. So by law, we can't just drop them off at the hospital. There has to be someone there that takes over the care of that patient for us. Again, every jurisdiction is going through this. Hospitals are doing the best we can. And again, I always point to unified response. What a great system that is, and that our city is not left without paramedics during those times that we're holding the wall at hospitals. The second challenge is just exposure to our personnel. We've had a couple close calls where we almost had to quarantine 2/3 of our department. Again, just a testament to where we're at in terms of educating our staff. They did everything the right way, and the personnel who were potentially going to expose the entire department did what they were supposed to do and isolated themselves prior to infecting the rest of the department. But it still is an ongoing challenge because the risk to us isn't necessarily the exposures that we're getting out in the field. It's personnel coming to work and then finding out that their loved ones had an exposure that possibly affected them. So those are just some of the challenges. But in the midst of all this, we're looking at recovery as well, and we're planning for recovery. I think I spoke to you a few months ago when we first submitted the first round of relief funding reimbursement through the state and feds. Just to kind of point to that, we did submit close to $480,000 for reimbursement from both the state and the federal and FEMA. And part of the recovery is continuing to track those costs moving forward and continue to seek reimbursement for those costs. Another big point of discussion in terms of recovery is the rollout of the vaccine and how that's going to play out with first responders. Initially, firefighters were going to be among the first to receive the vaccine. We're now probably going to be in the second round, but there's still some unknowns as to the role that we are going to play in either receiving those vaccines and assisting in distributing those vaccines, or we're still not clear on how that's going to roll out exactly. But we're prepared and we're positioned, and the discussions are starting in terms of how that's going to work in our community. Most likely for just citizens, it'll be CVS and Walgreens. Obviously, you probably watch the news. They are taking the lead on distributing the vaccine. And then the final parts of just the recovery plan, I think, Alan kind of pointed to it. It's pretty common in fire that we do an after action review of any response that we go on. This obviously is something none of us have responded to in our lifetime, not to mention responding to civil unrest, the worst wildfire season we've had in the state, and a change in city leadership that has been unlike anything else in my career. So that's the other part of this recovery process, is looking at how we responded as a city, things that could have went better, things that we did well. Definitely not a time to pat ourselves on the back. We are in the midst of this fight, so to speak, but our commitment as the department that leads the emergency management side of things with our division chief, Eric Anderson, we definitely will, as we transition into the recovery phase, one of the areas that we really want to focus on is getting the word out to our community, in terms of whether it's available to the vaccination or communicating just in terms of the next steps moving forward as a city. So really nothing tangible other than just an update. And I would suspect that most cities are talking that when we roll out this after action review, I will present it. I will work with the Public Safety Commission. Obviously, there's already a subcommittee established, and that will roll out, with recommendations. But a lot of cities are starting to talk about that after action review being done in a town hall setting, and actually bringing the community together to talk this through and see how we did as a community, and really prepare for the next big moment, whatever that is. Obviously, we live in Southern California. We haven't had the big earthquake either in my career, but the steps that we take now are going to pay big dividends when we face the next challenging disaster. So really, other than that, if there's specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'm having big internet issues, just FYI, which is why I shut off my video. Go ahead, Ed.
Hey, Chief, you mentioned that your staff is spending about 40 minutes waiting for attention at the ER. Do you have any information or even just a sense of what the capacity is like at Huntington Memorial? We hear about ICU bed shortages and that sort of thing in the news. I wonder where we stand.
So it's an ebb and flow in the county. And so, and I say that because when you look at the numbers, LA County has about, give or take 70 receiving hospitals for 911. Obviously there's other healthcare clinics, but as far as 911 receiving hospitals, about 70 in the county. The numbers are approximately 12,000 would be the capacity of all 70 receiving hospitals. We're at 4,000 patients now. But for a hospital to give available beds, that's two factors. One is there's a bed available, and two, there's staff available to treat the patient. So, and that's been the challenge. There's room in hospitals, but it's the staffing that remains a challenge, and that's kind of the unknown day to day. And so in Huntington Memorial, we're very fortunate to have Huntington Memorial as our first in hospital. They do an outstanding job. And so I don't know the exact number, but I can tell you this, that our paramedics, if we were not able to respond to Huntington Memorial, they're closed to saturation. That hasn't happened very often during this, and it hasn't happened in the last week. So here we are at the height of capacity, and Huntington Memorial is still receiving all the 911 ALS ambulances. So that's a good indication that we're not at saturation. We're doing a lot better than other hospitals. And just one final note on that. When I say it's kind of ebb and flow throughout the county, when one hospital does reach saturation, then there's efforts made to start diverting ALS units to other hospitals, which will start to impact those hospitals like Huntington Memorial from other jurisdictions that have a higher caseload than us.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Just a quick question. Are you guys able to try to optimize that? Say like, the last call you went to Huntington, it took 40 minutes, but, are you able to say, okay, maybe we'll try Arcadia and see if that wall time is less, or is it just kind of go to Huntington and wait and see?
So good question. And I want to be clear, it's not always 40 minutes. And the hospitals, again, there's times where we pull in, staff's available, we drop the patient, we do our report to them, and they take the patient. But to answer your question, Jeremy, when we respond on a patient, there's two paramedics on the RA. One paramedic is the patient man, the other is a radio man. That radio man is making contact with the hospital, with the receiving hospital, which is Huntington Memorial for our jurisdiction. That receiving hospital takes the report of the patient, basically triages the patient and determines if Huntington is the best place for that patient to be transported to. So there are times where we don't make that decision, but that decision will be made for us if in fact another facility is better equipped to treat the patient.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions for the Chief? Okay, thank you very much, Chief. Great presentation. So the next item is our City Council Liaison Communications, Mayor Mahmood.
I think you've heard a lot from me already.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us, and congratulations on your election to mayor. And our next item is staff liaison. If there's anything additional from either of the chiefs.
Yeah, just real quick, just let you know that we have brought on, last time I reported, we started the recruitment. We have hired 2 new firefighter paramedics. Actually, they're not new. One is considered entry level, but he does have some experience in the ALS side of things as a paramedic on the ambulance side of things. And then we've hired a lateral firefighter from San Diego County with about 7 years experience. So that brings our department back fully staffed, which is good news in light of the fact next year we do have some retirements. Actually, the succession plan for fire department is in full effect because we have basically a third of our department could be retired in the next 1 to 4 years. So, but we're in a good place in terms of succession planning. We have internal candidates that are ready to promote up, and we're constantly just ready to recruit on the bottom end to keep us fully staffed and keep the fire department moving forward.
Cool, thank you, Deputy Chief Selinsky.
Yeah, I'd like to announce that we hired a new police officer. He just graduated from the Rio Hondo Police Academy, and he's currently in field training and doing well. His name is Ederson Gramajo. And then also one of our longtime employees, Peggy Grangetto. She is our evidence technician. She also does a little bit of HR work with our hiring and training, and she has 30 plus years. She'll be retiring at the end of this month, so we want to wish her well.
Thank you for the update. Okay, next is commissioner comments. Ed, start from the bottom.
I don't have anything this month.
Scott,
Nothing to add.
Alan,
I think I've said plenty this meeting, nothing more.
Amin.
I don't really have anything, just to say thank you to everybody for their words today and to those folks who are retiring.
Thanks. Grace.
I actually do have a bit of an update from the schools. Since my last update at our October meeting, the schools are continuing distance learning through the end of the semester, which ends end of next week, so it's finals week. And then it'll be winter break till about January 4th. So they are planning on a reopening schedule. So there is a SPOSD COVID-19 compliance task force, and they've already developed a 2020-2021 school opening and safety plan. So it's on our school district website that everyone can look up. So late November, SPOSD received approval from the LA County Department of Public Health for transitional kindergarten, TK through 2nd grade waiver to reopen the schools for their primary grade level. I guess end of the first week of January, the LA County Department of Public Health will send reps to each of our elementary schools to check to ensure that there's proper safety protocols. So then throughout January, in January, the elementary school principals will host a parent town hall meeting to share details about the health and safety protocols. And so our tentative reopening plan, around January 27th, the tentative return date for preschool special ed students and transitional kindergarten will open end of January. And then around February 1st, the tentative return date will be for the K through 2 special day class and the 1st and 2nd graders. There is a new legislation proposal, AB 10, to propose that schools in the red, orange, yellow tiers need to reopen within 2 weeks. And so for more details regarding the opening plan, there's a school board meeting tomorrow night, Tuesday, December 15th, around 6:30 p.m., where you could hear a presentation and learn more about it. So that's the update from all the schools. Oh, and happy holidays.
Oh, thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a good holidays. We'll go ahead and adjourn. It's 10:07 a.m. Thanks again, and see everyone in January.
Thank you.